All right, that was another slight variation, this time on the descending pattern. Instead of playing 4, 3, 2, 1, you play 4, 2, 1, 3, 4, 2, 1, 3, and continue that pattern down the neck chromatically. Remember to keep your picking alternate the entire time. And that will wrap up our warm-up exercises. I usually play these type of exercises for, I guess, about 10 to 20 minutes before actually tackling some more difficult practicing or a gig or whatever. And it usually helps to get both hands acclimated to the guitar, especially when you're cold. So have fun and make sure you warm up. In order to realize our creative visions, it's essential that we develop the craft of our instrument, which leads us to the area of technique. I'm going to show you a whole bunch of different exercises that concentrate on developing speed and accuracy. Now for me, the most effective tool for developing these areas is the metronome. Whether that metronome is a simple click or a drum machine or sequencer isn't important. The important thing is that there's a steady and even pulse. Now practicing and playing to a metronome will help you to play accurately at any speed and also show you how to subdivide the beat any which way that you want. Now the first exercise involves a very familiar looking shape. It's based off of an A major scale in the 4th position, 2 octaves. So let me show you that fingering first. This exercise involves playing to a steady pulse. In other words, the speed or tempo of the click is not going to change, but how we subdivide that click is going to change. First, we'll start with playing 1 note per beat, which is chord notes. Now, I have a metronome setting of 66 beats per minute, which is really slow, but by the time we're done, you're going to be playing a lot of notes per beat, so it's important that we start slow. Remember also to keep a consistent down, up, down, up, down, up picking pattern the entire time. Here is chord notes to the metronome. 3, 4. Now when you're playing this, remember, it might seem easy, but really concentrate getting even spacing between all those notes. It's actually more difficult when you have a lot of space in between the clicks. Now let me demonstrate 8th notes to the metronome. This would be 2 notes per beat. 3, 4. And now triplets, which is 3 notes to the beat. 3, 4. The next division is 16th notes, 4 notes per beat. 3, 4. Now we're getting a bit faster. The next division is 6 notes per beat, or 16th note triplets. And the last group is 32nd notes, or 8 notes per beat. And this is going to be quite faster than what we started. But remember, the pulse didn't change at all. It's just the division of that pulse. 3, 4. Okay, now that you're familiar with playing to a metronome and subdividing the beats, I'd like to show you how to increase your speed. And what we're going to do here is we're going to develop accuracy at high speeds. The basic concept is you start with a slow tempo in the metronome, play the exercise or example as many times until you've mastered it at that tempo, and then increase the metronome about 8 beats per minute, and then play the exercise over and over at that tempo, increase it, and so on until you get to your desired tempo. I'm going to demonstrate this with an exercise that uses chromatics, 4 fingers in a row, and they're played as 16th notes to the metronome. Let me show you the exercise first, then I'll show you how to develop the speed. As I mentioned, this exercise is based off of a 16th note pattern, which means you're going to be playing 4 notes per beat. Besides concentrating on getting those notes to fall evenly over each click, you should also accent every 4 notes. In other words, every time the click comes down, accent with a harder pick stroke. So your group of 4 would sound like this. Etc., etc. And what this is going to enable you to do is when you get faster and faster, that accent will be your reference point. In other words, at a slow tempo, your accent might just sound like etc., and you'll be able to know where you are. But at a faster tempo, when the notes are whizzing by, your accent might be, in other words, and that's how you know exactly where you are when you're playing at fast tempos. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you how I would take this exercise and develop it speed-wise. Now, the first thing you have to do is you have to get a goal tempo. Let's say our goal tempo for today is 200 beats per minute. Now normally I would start this pretty low on the metronome, maybe about 100 or so, and it would take me quite a while to get to 200. But for the video's purpose, I'll start at about 120 and I'll increase it in larger increments than I would normally do, just to save some time. And what's going to happen is by the time I get to 200, hopefully not only should it be wailing, but it should also be clean. Another thing to keep in mind is your technique that you're using when you're playing slow should be the same technique that you use when you're playing fast. In other words, when you're playing slow, you're programming in your technique. So when you play fast, be consistent in your hand position and also in your left hand position, your right and left. Okay, here we go. Okay, so we finally reached 200. Now, like I said before, normally that would take a lot longer because I'd go in increments of 8. Now, if you find at any point along that development that you just don't have it, it's not coming together, it's not clean, like I'm going up to 200, if 176 I felt like I was pushing it, it's a good idea to back the metronome down, go to a slower speed. So I was at 200, let's say that was difficult, I'll go back down to about 170, try to get comfortable there first. And then go back up to 200 and see how it feels. On a similar note, if you reach this desired speed that you're going to and you still want to push the envelope a little further, what you can do is, let's say you want to hit 208 now. Go past 208, go to like 216 and just kill yourself, and then go back to 208 and that tempo will feel a lot easier. Let's attempt that. That was very difficult. Let's go back down to 208 and see if it's any easier now. Okay, so it's pretty much there. So you get the idea about pushing the envelope and then going back. Just remember, make sure that you're clean and accurate, and remember to accent the notes as well. Okay, now I'd like to demonstrate the same technique, building speed and accuracy, but this time with a 16th note triplet pattern. You're going to play 6 notes per beat, and it's based off of a 3-note per string pattern in E minor. So here it goes. One, two, three, four. Okay, then you would follow the same steps to get to your goal tempo. Let's say your goal tempo in this case is about 126. Let's hear what it sounds like at that tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4. My first band experience technically was actually the first time I even picked up a guitar when I started again when I was 12. And these friends of mine, actually our ex-keyboard player, everybody would gather at his house because he had a piano. And I remember they were playing some Neil Young. They were playing Hey Hey My My. And they assigned me the little down, 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 That was my part, and I sat there getting that, and I guess that was kind of a bad experience. Another good way to develop speed is to work on what I call fragments or segments. That is, if you have a long exercise or passage that's really difficult to play, instead of trying to swallow the whole thing, take bites. Work on small sections and develop that section and then connect them one by one until you have the big picture. This way you can concentrate on one little thing at a time as opposed to tons of notes. Now I have several examples of what I call scale fragments, and they're little patterns that you just play over and over and over and over, and eventually I'll show you how to develop these into long scale sequences that you can use in soloing and whatnot. So let's start by going through the different scale fragments. All of the examples I just played were in the key of G major. You can play these anywhere on the neck between any two strings. It doesn't really matter. You can practice them chromatically, meaning if you were playing this one, perhaps play it 4 times in each position and then move up a half step. Or you can pick a key and play them diatonically. In other words, conform your fingers to the notes in the key. You can practice these scale fragments with the metronome, as we discussed, or there's a couple of other ways to develop speed. First way involves playing the exercise over and over and over, but starting in a slow tempo and gradually increasing the speed and then bringing it back down to a slow tempo. So you're almost like revving. You're almost revving your playing. And as you do this, as you play faster, you can also vary the degree of dynamics that you pick with. You can pick harder or softer. It's a really good way to develop the speed. Here's an example. Another way of developing speed is by playing the exercise over and over and over, but this time playing consistently at a slow to moderate tempo and then sort of blasting out a fast tempo only a couple of times. So in other words, you're jogging for a while, then you're going to sprint for a second and go back to jogging. This is a way to build stamina as well as speed. It sounds like this. Now, a fun thing to do when you're working on all these exercises, since they're pretty similar, some of them are using 16th notes and some are 16th note triplets, is to sort of interact. In other words, mix them together. Like you might have one that sounds like, which is what I've been playing for the last couple of seconds. And there was another one that went. There was also another one that went. Try combining some of these exercises randomly and use your imagination. It might sound something like this. Each one of these fragments could now be used in a longer sequence of notes, perhaps a run through a scale or whatnot. So let me show you how a few of these can be developed. 1, 2, 3, 4. You should recognize the first part of that as the 3-note per string fragment that we did before. Except I transposed it to the key of A and played it through an A major scale. And the sequence consisted of playing that same pattern starting from each string. And then using the descending pattern to do the same thing. And you can play these patterns through the scales. You can change positions. You can play and repeat the sequence in any position as many times as you want. Just kind of mix it up. And that makes for a good run in a solo if you're trying to build some tension. I'll demonstrate that a little bit later. Let's move on to another long sequence of notes that's based off of another fragment. And here's the descending version of that. once again, hopefully you recognize the little fragments that originated these little runs. And descending, while it's fresh in our mind, came from that and sounded like this. And ascending was pretty much the same thing, except starting on the first finger. It also has a little bit of the triplet in there. But we're just arranging the notes so that it works out to be a 16th note pattern. Here's another example using a fragment that includes string skipping. Now with this one, instead of moving up the neck, playing 3 notes per string, I stayed in the same position because it facilitates skipping strings without having to do any position changes. So instead of having to go something awkward like that, we're staying in the same position. So the scale shape I'm doing has a repeated E, but we don't really hear that repeated E because we're skipping strings. Here's the pattern slow. Let's just do one more 16th note pattern through a scale, once again using one of the fragments that we learned earlier. Here it is slow. See if you can recognize the fragments in this one. Okay, now that we have all the scalar technique under our hands, let me show you how this can be applied to improvising. I'm going to solo over progression in D minor, basically using D, Dorian, and D minor scales, and I'm going to throw in a couple of these 16th note runs, and you can see the way it interacts with the melodies and whatnot. And once you get a taste of this, maybe you can try it in your own solos.